Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, and we have our very special regular guest with us today. This is Marc Gronich with the statewide news service. Welcome, Marc, back to the Jewish View.
Thank you for having me back. It's
this
great.
Is television, not radio, but all right. I mean, I'm sure you can transfer your media from one thing to another.
I can.
You're good on camera.
And I service radio stations around the state with customized news from the Capitol.
Very good.
And I did that from 1981 to 96, took a little break, and now I'm back doing it again, round two.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun. And I really had a good start when Governor Spitzer said day one, and day one everything changes. Day one for me was the day one of the administration, also January 1st. That's when I restarted, yes.
You're together with the governor. Well, you know, there's never a lack for news around Albany, you know, with the states. I'm sure you're constantly busy. There's always some, you know, doings over here, you know, some political ideas. But, you know, we're on the Jewish View, and of course, is Jewish, so I mean, we've had, and you have brought politicians, and obviously a Jewish person works in the world, so you care about no matter who is the governor, who's the mayor, who's the assembly person, you know, they're representing us. But here we're very special. Now we actually have a Jewish governor in the state, so we can actually tie it really directly to the Jewish View. This is the first governor, or
no,
what's the history of New York State?
Herbert Lehman was the first Jewish governor.
All right.
And it's amazing in a state that has so many Jewish residents, mainly downstate, but throughout the state, that we've only had two Jewish governors. This is the second one. Herbert Lehman was in office during the 1950s. No, 30s, 40s, yeah, in that range. Yeah, it was a long time ago, 60-some-odd years ago.
And now we have finally.
And now we have another. But, you know, some people say he's a Gino, Jew in name only, because he's, you know, he has not. I found this out through various sources, including through the governor's press office also confirmed it, but the governor never had a bar mitzvah. Now, you know, some people say, and you can confirm this for me, but you don't really need to have a bar mitzvah. It's a ceremony, it's pomp and circumstance, but I always thought that you at least had to be called up for an aliyah on your 13th birthday to make it official. Other people have told me since that you just have to turn 13 and you're automatically a bar mitzvah. Now, how does that...
That's true. I mean, bar mitzvah means that you're obligated in the mitzvahs. Just like, for example, you can have your driver's license at 16. So what if you don't have it at 16? You didn't lose any privileges. You have the right to do things. So in a bar mitzvah, it's just that people always do, because if they have the first possibility, you know, I mean, to get driving, it's like, oh, I got to drive on my 16th birthday, or I have to have a drink on my 21st birthday. Of course, you have the right to do it, but, you know, a Jewish person should want to do it. You know, if you have the ability, the privilege to do something, hey, wow, first opportunity, I'm going to do it. The parents should want that for their children. The children should want it for themselves. That's why it's done. Unfortunately, again, a lot of cases that parents don't care about it, and the children, you know, obviously the parents don't care about it. The children aren't going to care that much either. It's just, so therefore, the second opinion is right. It's really not needed. What happens is it's just, if you say the pride of being Jewish, I mean, obviously that's what I'm saying. What happens, not so much legalistic, but what kind of attitude do they have that they just didn't say, you know, I'm not saying that the bar mitzvah is the end all, because a lot of kids have their bar mitzvah, okay, I finished, I'm not done with being Jewish, and let me go on with life. Unfortunately, that's also a big attitude, but shows that the parents didn't care enough to belong to any affiliation and give the child any Hebrew school education, and that's really what it kind of shows on a lack of Jewish pride in their own, or actually obviously a lack of Jewish education, because they don't know that much. So how can you live like a good Jew if you don't have the Jewish education? That's pretty much more what it looks upon.
Well, also what was sort of striking for me was the fact that the first place that the governor had a ceremony was at a Presbyterian church on State Street in Albany. It wasn't, you know, he could have just as easily, I suppose, gone to a congregation Beth Emeth if he wanted to go to any synagogue. You know, that wasn't that close. And Herbert Lehman used to attend high holiday services at Beth Emeth when he was governor. But again, in the 30s, the governor, it's a different time. You know, you didn't have easy travel as you do today. You know, the travel wasn't as easy back then. Go back and forth to New York, or to go, to go back to your hometown. I mean, basically, governors back then really did live in the mansion. They lived in Albany. This was their hometown. So, and I'm not even sure that Beth Emeth was on Academy Road at the time.
Yeah.
They might have been
Right down
downtown.
a few blocks
Right.
away.
So, but I know that Rabbi Scott Speen, the rabbi of Congregation Beth Emeth, told me that he extended an invitation to Governor Spitzer to attend high holiday services at his synagogue to continue the tradition of Jewish governors attending high holiday services.
What did the governor respond?
No answer yet, but it was in the midst of many letters that the governor got, so maybe they're weeding through it.
But you think, I mean, it's like funny because people say, some senators, whoever they are they friendly to Jews? I said, listen, New York State, my political take is, if you're in New York State, you have to go to some bagel fest or, what I'm saying, some Israeli parade. I mean, that just, whether you're Jewish or non-Jewish.
Well,
I mean, that just comes with the thing. So
Well,
you would think maybe just for the outward services, hey, I'm Jewish, what are people going to say? Yom Kippur, you're working, what are you in the office, Yom Kippur? So whether he's religious and feeling or not, just from the attitude.
But it goes beyond that. Now, right after the inauguration in January, our world-class Jewish weekly newspaper, The Jewish World,
Right.
I wrote this back page story, and they used as the headline, "Ethnicity Seen Irrelevant in Rise of Spitzer."
That was your words or their
No,
words?
that was their words. My words was, being Jewish just doesn't matter anymore.
Really?
That was my suggested title, because everyone who I spoke to for this article here, whether it was the mayor of New York City, who's Jewish, or it was a congressman who's Jewish, or it was an elected official who wasn't Jewish, like Albany Assemblyman Jack McEnany, whether I spoke to a Reform rabbi or an Orthodox rabbi, they all said it just doesn't matter whether he's Jewish. His ethnicity, his religion, it just doesn't. It matters whether he's going to be a good governor. It doesn't matter whether he's Jewish. So my headline would have been, being Jewish just doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
If it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. And if you're speaking to the people inside the community, and they're saying it doesn't matter, then it just doesn't matter anymore. And I know that our previous governor, George Pataki, was very proud of his Hungarian heritage and promoted that quite a bit while he was governor. Before him, Mario Cuomo was extremely proud of his Italian heritage. I mean, you saw that everywhere. Even in his speeches, he would throw in some Italian words. And before him, Hugh Carey was very proud of his Irish heritage. I remember one time Hugh Carey and U.S. Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, may he rest in peace, they were both singing "When Irish Eyes Are Smiling" a cappella at the Empire State Plaza during a fall festival that they had down there one October. They were so proud of their Irish heritage. And, but to come here into New York State and get elected to a statewide position, showing that you're not, like you were saying, proud of your Judaism or embracing your Judaism in any way, is a bit off-putting. I don't know. It sort of puts it off a little bit. It's a little off-putting.
The Rebbe once said, it's interesting. He says, how are, a lot of people, I don't know if this is Governor Spitzer because like he's already second generation put off or something.
Yeah.
It's not like his parents wanted him, to have something. I mean, I don't know his parents, but if they didn't educate him, didn't belong anywhere. But the Rebbe always felt, it's interesting about the Rebbe when people would say, well, my Judaism may get in the way of my career. He says, on the contrary, he says, people respect you. Just like you're saying, so respect. You say, oh, those Irishmen. You say, well, fine, you're an Irishman. Be proud of being Irish. There's only respect. And that's why I think, non-Jewish people only respect, people for saying, fine, you're Jewish. I understand it's the high holidays, and they respect that. They won't, look down on that.
And a lot of times it's because people know where you're coming from. It sort of builds a framework for who you are, and they know how centered you are when you say, I'm Irish, Italian, Jewish, Hungarian, whatever. I mean, it sort of gives you a framework, and people like that. They like to know, who is this guy coming at me and talking to me, So I would say that one of the other issues that this, not being bar mitzvahed or having that ceremony, being called up for an aliyah, not embracing your Judaism, is that his wife is not Jewish. He married someone, Silda Wall Spitzer. She's a Southern Baptist upbringing from North Carolina. and he met her in college, and they, were college sweethearts, and they got married, and they're bringing up their children celebrating both types of holidays, Jewish holidays as well as, I guess, Southern Baptist or Christian holidays. I mean, I'm not quite sure what they do during the holiday time. May find out in December, if there's a menorah in the mansion still. I don't know. We'll see. But, I mean, there are occasions when the governor traditionally comes to the Capitol, to the third floor of the Capitol, to address the Chabad community, for example, when around the Rebbe's birthday, I believe. I know that they passed that. Rabbi Butman comes up here and passes out matzah, and and the governors, Cuomo and Pataki, have both come up to talk to and pay their respects to Lubavitcher Rebbe, but also, to honor Rabbi Butman and all the Chabad community. And I know all the assemblymen and senators who are Jewish or non-Jewish or represent Jewish communities, they come and join in on the ceremony at the Capitol. And it'll be interesting to see this year whether Governor Spitzer, comes up to the third floor to the speaker's conference room and says, hey, I'm here too, and what he has to say in terms of his Judaism. At that time,
interesting,
we'll see if he ignores that. Now, I do know that on St. Patrick's Day, pardon me, he did go to 3 masses.
Really?
Yeah, he attended mass at St. Patrick's Cathedral in Manhattan, among 2 other places. So, that's a. I know he embraced that. We'll see what else he embraces. Again, day one, everything changes. You don't know. But he's 47 years old, and I think by the time maybe he turns 50, maybe in 3 years, maybe we can do the bar mitzvah for him. Maybe we can encourage him to be more sensitive. Maybe you'll officiate. Who knows? Maybe.
We'll could be.
So. That's the.
In your opinion, do you think let's say he would be, just a fictional scenario, a person would be very Jewish-minded. Well, you have Speaker Silver. He's not the governor. He's obviously Speaker of the Assembly. And I just know he does put, there is things you can do. It's not just, all right, singing a song or going to a holiday, which is nice. But even legalistically, like even in the Assembly pushing some legislation, I know Speaker Silver does. Putting kosher legislation, for example, it's dear to his heart. I'm not saying maybe someone else would also, maybe because, again, there's so many Jews or Orthodox Jews in New York State.
Well, and there's another very religious Jew in the Assembly, Dov Heikind, who represents, I think, Borough Park, right? Yeah. And, I mentioned to Dov Heikind about this. I said, how can you, usually he's not shy about endorsing Republicans. He's a very conservative Democrat, and he endorses Republicans regularly. And I said, why wouldn't you endorse John Faso, who was running against Elliot Spitzer for governor? And he says, because I didn't endorse Elliot because he was Jewish. I endorsed him because he'd be a good governor. And I endorsed him because of his ideas and his principles. And again, being Jewish didn't matter to Assemblyman Heikind. Again, when I spoke to any I wrote this article basically around the inaugural and the State of the State message, because a lot of people from all around the state came to the Capitol. So whenever I saw a rabbi in the halls, I stopped him and I asked him a couple of questions. And I spoke to folks from rabbis from Orange County and from Brooklyn and from upstate here. It just didn't matter. They didn't want to get into that whole issue of, being Jewish or Jewish to this extent or that extent or embracing it in any way. It just wasn't a factor for them. And I wasn't necessarily looking at it from a religious standpoint more than an ethnic standpoint. And that's why in the headline here it says ethnicity seen irrelevant in Rise of Spitzer, not religion seems irrelevant.
So you think it's maybe more correct?
Ethnicity. It's more of the ethnicity, embracing your ethnicity more so than embracing the religion, because you could be Jewish ethnically as opposed to religiously. But he's not. He's very bland on all of that. He doesn't embrace it either way.
But this would say it'd be interesting to see that maybe as a role, people know he's Jewish, or he knows that people know he's Jewish. Maybe he'll just feel as a role model. Like you say, ethnicity, some people, I say, I don't work on Yom Kippur. Not, I don't religion, I'll do anything, but it's just people know I'm Jewish, and it doesn't look right. That's how they say to me. It just doesn't look right that people know that Jews should come to work on Yom Kippur. Not that I care about Yom Kippur, not that I even go to the synagogue on Yom Kippur, but I don't want people to talk. So, it's like I say, it's even beyond that. Like you'll say, hey, it's Hanukkah, or it's Rosh Hashanah, I got to do something. People know I'm Jewish. What does it look like?
Yeah.
Here's a Jewish guy who comes to the office on Yom Kippur.
Well, here it is, coming up to talking about budget negotiations and the end of the budget deadline, and will we have a late budget or an on-time budget? And again, Passover is April 2nd, I believe, right?
Right, correct.
And it's 8 days, so it goes to April 10th, if my math is correct. And that Sunday is Easter Sunday, prior to, so it's like the 8th, 7th or 8th is Easter Sunday.
Right,
the 10th is a Tuesday, if I,
Yeah.
have my math correct.
Good.
So people are saying the holiday period ends on that Sunday. They're not considering the last 2 days of the holiday, which is a yontiv. It's just not on the calendar. Passover, it says, April 2nd. It doesn't say Passover yontiv for the last 2 days. So what's going to happen, in the mindset of the capital? Will there be budget negotiations?
Well, Speaker Silver won't show up.
Okay, maybe he'll have some impact and some influence that way. And maybe that'll drive the process, and we'll just, extend it an extra 2 days.
Before the Passover holiday, get it done.
But you mentioned to people who are looking at the calendar to say, and they say, oh, Easter Sunday ends the holiday period. I thought, no, it's April 10th that ends the holiday period. And I show them, I have to bring a Jewish calendar into the Capitol to show them it really is a little bit later than Easter Sunday. So it's a mindset, and the governor could really lead in that regard also, and just to he doesn't have to practice it, but it's an ethnicity type of thing. You just have to be aware of it. It's an education. It's an awareness. So I think that's where the failing is on that side. He wants to be a leader. Well, great, but he can lead in so many more ways than what he's doing now. And everyone says, well, this is just enough. That's good,
It's interesting which way you'll take, but he's still raw, he's still new. I mean, like you say, the holidays haven't really rolled around. This is his first year of experience of
and
Passover,
that's why I said,
Hanukkah.
let's see what happens in December when he, they're traditionally in the executive chamber, they decorate it with a tree, and they also have a menorah. And we'll see and the menorah is very nice. It's oil, and it's an oil menorah, and it's an older-fashioned menorah, and it's beautiful. We'll see what happens there. We'll see what happens if they do the Rebbe's birthday.
He'll show up.
If he'll show up for that.
What kind of words he'll say?
Right. Exactly. Will he be out of town coincidentally? Oh, sorry. Wish I knew about this. Well, it's every year the same day. But it's very interesting, because I thought that some of these folks who I would have interviewed, would have at least said would have acknowledged or spoken more about the fact that it is an intermarriage, and continuity is such an important part of our mantra, of what we're trying to talk more about continuity and less about intermarriage. And here he is, the governor of the state, who's intermarried with another religion.
It's interesting. Well, it just shows even the Jewish mindset, because it's probably, unfortunately, it's so acceptable in Jewish, because I don't know if you would say 30, 40 years ago, let's ask that question, maybe in 1960, let's just, in a time machine, go back, it's 50 years, 45 years ago, and say, oh, an intermarried Jew, would that go over well in the Jewish community? Or it's, and compare that to nowadays, where it's just, it's not accepted, or it's just say, listen, it's a fact of life.
Well, I'll read to you what Assemblyman Jack McEnany, who's Irish, but I spoke to him about this, and he said, it says what direction the country is going in, and that a lot of the old barriers have disappeared. Remember, JFK was the first Catholic president. And I remember Senator Abraham Ribicoff of Connecticut. He says, I remember them writing at the time, 1972, he should have been one of the likely candidates for vice president at that time, but oh well, he was Jewish, and that wouldn't even be considered. 1972. All right? It's not It's not the times they are changing, they have changed. The performance in office that you're going to see from Governor Spitzer is going to further break down barriers that shouldn't have been there in the first place. And he said, speaking as an Irish Catholic, and remembering well, I was 17 years old when JFK got elected, there were an awful lot of Catholics who played it down because you were being sensitive to anyone who wasn't of the same background, but also you didn't want to play that up. You wanted someone accepted on their own merits, and I think it's a subconscious thing that you do when and anyone who has the same heritage and identity. You try to bring out to other people what he means in the big picture, regardless what his religion may be, by any standard. This is a man with extraordinary promise, McEnany speaking of Spitzer. He's a success with everything he's done, and when you deal with people who are not of the same ethnicity, you want to point out to them that if this were strictly on the merits, he would still be there. And I thought that summed it up beautifully. And but you know, the people, Alan Hevesy, who was the disgraced controller who had to resign from office, he was Jewish. Most people didn't realize that, but he had an intermarriage also. So we've had other statewide candidates who were Jewish who played down their religion and ethnicity. You know.
I mean, it's only a few months into the year, and you, like I say, you're our pulse on the Capitol. Putting Jewish aside, now just pure governor. I mean, I know I've heard that and I've read that from many people. Oh, he's going to be great. He's going to be great. So, you know, it's like baseball a little bit. You know, he's going to be great, and you never hear from them again. I mean, how is in actuality? It's one thing to say who he's going to be.
Well, I'm sort of comparing Governor Spitzer with his first term or first few months with Governor Schwarzenegger's first few months in California. And Governor Schwarzenegger had to learn very quickly how to deal with the legislative process. Governor Spitzer has always been known as a prosecutor. He's always been known as a legal eagle. It's a matter of now saying, all right, now I'm a chief executive, I'm not a prosecutor, I don't have to put everyone under the spotlight all the time. I can assuage them, I can make them feel more comfortable with getting from their opinion to where I need them to be. And he needs to show, you know, the art of persuasion a little bit more and improve the rhetoric. You know, he even said to someone, one of the leaders in the legislature, Jim Tedisco, who's the Assembly Republican leader, you know, that I'm going to steamroll over you. And he's going to be the steamroller. And every time now, that's the big thing, steamroller Spitzer. So they're always, it's that moniker that he got for himself, that he made for himself, that he's the steamroller. Well, people like Senator Joe Bruno, for example, the Senate Majority Leader, he's 77 years old. He says, I'm too old to be steamrolled over. I'll show him how to drive the steamroller, but he's got to learn from me. I'm not going to be steamrolled over, and I'm too old for that, and I don't have anything to lose, you know, by it. So, you know, he's not going to scare me. So there's all these fighting words going on amongst the leaders that are also leading to possibly a late budget. And they all said they want the right budget, not an on-time budget, which means we're probably going into April or May before we get a budget. And a lot of that is centered around health care. There's a big health care issue, that education also, but mainly health care is a big stumbling block.
Because of too much money? That's what's...
They're cutting, well, the Governor Spitzer proposed the largest budget ever, over $120 billion, and increased just about everything, but he cut hospitals. He cut the aid to hospitals. He cut the money that would go to hospitals because he felt that's where the waste and spending is, that's where the fraud and abuse is, and he said that they're just not using the money properly. We need to get rid of giving money to the hospitals and let them fend for themselves. I mean, they can do fundraising, they can do naming rights, endowments, you know, that sort of thing, but they need to figure out a way to do it on their own. But at the same time, just about, you know, healthcare providers love the budget. I mean, all these lobbying groups, the teachers like the budget, but they say we just want more, you know. And the School Boards Association said, yeah, you know, the budget's great, and accountability, you know, if the governor is proposing, it probably will be passed, that if school districts don't improve, the school board members could be fired and tossed out of office because they are elected. So the school board members, if they're not responsible and they're not spending the money right and improving the schools, which is their charge, then they could be dismissed before the next election. So that's pretty dramatic. So there are all these issues going on, but the arts groups are happy. They're getting an extra $4 million. They want 5, but they got 4, so they're always asking for an extra $1 million, no matter how much they're given more. You know, and there are other groups that just keep saying, "We want more money, but we're happy. Thank you very much for what you gave us." You know, so it was a very, you know, it's a huge budget increase over last year or this current year's budget, but it's way above any cost of living or inflation rate. And the governor just, you know, figured he'd start off with that. And you know, as you know, the latest budget negotiations, he's imaging the Senate Majority Leader, the conservative Republican, as being the big spender because he wants to spend more money on the hospitals and to make them whole. So the governor's saying, "Look, we already spent a whole lot of money. Now you want to even spend more," and everyone else is saying, "We got to cut spending." But you're saying, "Hey, spend more money," you know. So it's really flipped around. They were like in an alternate universe at the Capitol, where the tax and spend Democratic liberals, you know, are getting away from that label, and they're saying, "Hey, look, it's Joe Bruno who's been there all the time," like that. So
it's never a quiet, dull moment.
It's never a dull moment. It's always busy.
Your work is. You're never going to be without a story over here.
I hope not. And it looks like, you know, like you said, it's going to be a very interesting year. The governor's also tackling a lot of important issues that normally take place after the budget's passed. You know, workers' comp reform, things that are not budget-related items per se. But those items are getting agreed upon and approved before the budget. So it may even be just a shorter session, and maybe session would end right after the budget's passed. You know, might not be much more work to be done after the budget's passed. So, as you would say, stay tuned.
That's it. We're going to have to stay tuned, but we're out of time. But we always enjoy Mark. Either he brings a guest or he brings himself. He always something to say and interesting. Our man in the Capitol over here, so he tells us what's happening. And thank you very much, Mark, of the statewide news service over here, and give you our blessing for success in all your endeavors.
Thank you very much.